Hello and welcome to The Scientist in Sleep, where science meets imagination and knowledge is conveyed warmly enough to lull you into a journey of wondrous discovery. Today, we will go back hundreds of millions of years to an era when the Earth turned into a snowball, with ice and snow stretching all the way to the equator. Yes, we are talking about the Snowball Earth period, where oceans froze, life struggled to survive under thick ice, and our planet may have looked like a cosmic ice cream. If you are curious to understand how life endured the harshest conditions and explore untold mysteries of the Earth, make sure to hit subscribe and watch the video to the end, because every second of this journey contains a magical story you won't want to miss. As ice began to spread from the poles toward the equator, Earth became a completely different world, a planet where life faced conditions so harsh they were almost unimaginable. No more lush green forests or buzzing swarms of insects, no more scent of damp earth or gentle floral aromas. All that remained were rocks, frozen water, and microorganisms silently surviving beneath the ocean's surface. Massive, sluggish glaciers, slowly but relentlessly advancing toward the tropics, created scenes that were both majestic and chillingly cold. This imagined image, though alien, is the key to understanding why Earth once experienced one of the most profound global ice ages in its history: Snowball Earth. Notably, before ice covered the planet, Earth was not always frigid. Hundreds of millions of years ago, during the Proterozoic era, the climate was much warmer than today. Microorganisms thrived in rich oceans, volcanoes were continuously active, and supercontinents, most notably Rodinia, were slowly shifting. Rodinia was a massive supercontinent stretching across half of the Earth, and its movement created significant changes in ocean currents and weather patterns. As tectonic plates separated, many new coastlines emerged, leading to more rainfall, increased rock erosion, and most importantly, the process of weathering that removed carbon dioxide, Earth's crucial greenhouse gas, from the atmosphere. A decrease in atmospheric CO2 meant that Earth retained heat less effectively, and coupled with the fact that the sun at the time was younger and about 6% weaker than today, the planet began to cool. This combination gradually pushed Earth into a state vulnerable to positive feedback loops, mechanisms in which an initial climate change amplifies itself through successive effects. A prime example is ice and snow. They reflect sunlight back into space, cooling Earth's surface, creating more ice, reflecting even more light, and so on, with the planet seemingly falling into a prolonged cold chain. This was when the domino effects began to align, transforming Earth from a relatively warm planet into a massive snowball. This is not just theoretical. Geological evidence confirms that it actually happened. Around the world, from Australia and Namibia to Canada, geologists have discovered glacial sediments near the equator, rocks known as dropstones, transported by glaciers and deposited into ocean sediment layers. Even characteristic scratches caused by ice movement and unusual chemicals in marine sediments revealed that Earth truly experienced global cooling. One can imagine once warm oceans, home to single-celled organisms, gradually covered by ice while global temperatures dropped significantly. Interestingly, Earth did not become cold instantly, but slid gradually into the ice age over millions of years. Temperatures decreased slowly, ice began accumulating from the poles, advancing toward the equator, step by step transforming the planet into a snowball. Even though scientists do not fully agree on the extent of total freezing, evidence for a widespread and prolonged ice age is clear. Some hypotheses suggest that open water may have persisted near the equator, but ice still covered most oceans and continents. In this context, life was forced to adapt or face the risk of mass extinction. Another critical factor was the interaction between climate feedback loops. As CO2 levels dropped, global temperatures fell, leading to faster ice growth. Ice reflected sunlight, cooling the planet further, producing new ice, and this spiral continued. This was not merely a fictional scenario. Climate models and geological data show that the ice-snow feedback loop could maintain an extremely cold state for a long period. This also explains why regions near the equator, which today have tropical climates, show traces of ancient glaciation. A frozen planet also altered fundamental biological cycles. Life in the oceans, where temperatures were low and sunlight reduced, had to find ways to survive in extreme conditions. Marine organisms adapted by living deeper or seeking refuge in rock crevices and sediments. Thick ice layers on the surface blocked sunlight, reducing surface level biological production and slowing the carbon cycle, creating a harsh ecological spiral. This is proof of nature's astonishing power. A planet can self regulate, challenging humans and life itself through purely physical and chemical laws. In looking at this process, we realize that Earth was not static, as its icy exterior might suggest. Every moving ice block, each layer of weathered rock, every carbon dioxide molecule removed from the atmosphere was a chapter in the planet's grand story. The planet was scripting its own narrative, and we, observing through the lens of science, have only begun to grasp part of the bigger picture. In rocks, sediments, and glacial traces lie lessons of adaptation, endurance, and resilience that subsequent organisms, from plants to vertebrates, would follow for hundreds of millions of years. And when you imagine Earth during the snowball period, it is not merely a frozen sphere, but a contemplative planet, a place where geological, climatic, and biological factors intersect to create complex loops. You begin to realize that every ice layer, every current, every volcanic eruption contributes to the planet's long story. A story not just about cold, but about how Earth operates, self regulates, and prepares for monumental steps in the history of life. Thus, as we continue to follow the journey of ice from the poles toward the equator, imagine standing on a cold, rocky shore, hearing gentle waves lapping against ice, feeling the chill from the ocean, and envisioning glaciers slowly advancing toward the tropics. This is the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's story, a chapter where each ice layer, each sediment, and each feedback loop tells a story about life, about challenges, and about the resilience of this planet. As ice began to spread and cover the poles, Earth not only turned completely white, but also entered a powerful feedback loop that scientists call the albedo feedback. The mechanism is quite simple, but extremely effective. Ice reflects most of the sunlight back into space, cooling the planet's surface, forming more ice, and thus the process amplifies itself. Imagine trying to stay warm in winter while someone constantly opens the window. Earth during the snowball Earth period was the climatic version of that nightmare. As ice expanded, it promoted faster ice formation to the point where the planet almost lost the ability to regulate its temperature. This effect extended beyond the surface. Thickening sea ice changed the salinity and density of the water, causing ocean currents to slow down or be completely restructured. The oceans no longer operated as a normal thermodynamic system. Warm water sank deeper, shallow saline areas gradually became sealed off, and nutrient circulation was restricted. Organisms living in these oceans, especially photosynthetic microorganisms relying on sunlight, faced an extreme challenge. Light penetrating the thick ice was almost insufficient to sustain life. Without refuge zones, many species might have been completely wiped out. Fortunately, nature always finds small openings. Some light still passed through cracks and thinner ice regions near the equator. Moreover, hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, where heat and minerals leak from within Earth, became important survival oases. Microbial populations there thrived through chemosynthesis, converting compounds like hydrogen sulfide into energy without needing sunlight. These environments, small but resilient, clearly demonstrate that life does not require perfect conditions. With just a refuge, a crack, or a minimal chemical energy source, life can persist. Geology acted like a silent detective, leaving clues about the Ice Age. Dropstones, rocks transported by glaciers and deposited into ocean sediments, appear at tropical latitudes, clear evidence that ice advanced into unimaginable regions. Glacial scratches on ancient rocks appearing near the equator also show that ice moved slowly but inexorably. These clues, along with special limestone layers called carbonate caps, provide evidence of deep freezing and subsequent rapid warming, indicating that Earth underwent extreme climate fluctuations. Viewed from space, Earth during this period looked like a completely bright white sphere. Land and oceans buried under kilometers of ice and snow, the atmosphere dry and thin, winds whistling through glacial valleys with no surface life moving. Only the expanding glaciers and bubbling hydrothermal vents reminded that life had not entirely disappeared. Beneath the ice-covered oceans, bacteria clung to rocks, hid in cracks, or floated in the water, feeding on remaining chemical energy. This was not a bustling ecosystem, but a slow-living, resilient, and enduring community. These microorganisms, including cyanobacteria, archaea, and other extremophiles, are vivid proof of life's patience and adaptability. They thrived around hydrothermal vents, utilizing Earth's heat and minerals, completely independent of sunlight. In some areas near the equator, where ice was thin or cracked, algae and photosynthetic bacteria could still use weak light to survive. These environments are similar to modern polar sea ice ecosystems in the Arctic and Antarctic, where bacteria and algae form living mats beneath the ice. During this period, biological productivity was low, and all processes occurred slowly. Bacteria reproduced less, nutrients were scarce, yet life persisted. Survivors had to adapt to extremely low temperatures, high pressure, and chemically limited environments. They evolved thicker cell membranes, more resilient enzymes, and improved tolerance to salt, cold, and pressure, traits that prepared them for the biological explosion after the ice melted. One notable hero of this era was the stromatolite, layered structures built by cyanobacterial populations. Stromatolites adorn shallow seas, forming rough reef-like shapes, evidence of life's persistence even during a global freeze. Ancient stromatolite fossils dating back billions of years still exist, reminding us that bacteria could survive seemingly impossible conditions. In some places, such as Shark Bay in Australia, stromatolites still grow, a living legacy of early life on Earth. This image raises broader questions. If bacteria could survive the Ice Age, could the same occur on other icy planets or moons? Astrobiologists believe this is entirely plausible. On Europa or Enceladus, icy moons with subsurface oceans beneath thick ice shells, biological conditions might resemble the microbial ecosystems sheltering in hydrothermal vents during snowball Earth. Life on Earth becomes a test model, showing that life does not require abundant light or heat, only a small refuge and time to persist. Overall, the global ice age was not only an extreme challenge, but also a test of life's resilience. Many bacterial lineages went extinct, but surviving lineages evolved new adaptive mechanisms, tougher membranes, more efficient enzymes, higher tolerance to salt and cold. These evolutions became the foundation for more complex organisms later, opening a new chapter of diverse and abundant life on Earth. While Earth remained buried under kilometers of ice, with oceans sealed and a cold, dry atmosphere, everything seemed unchanging. Yet just beneath the surface, Earth was quietly preparing for a major transformation. Volcanoes continued to erupt, steadily releasing carbon dioxide, regardless of whether the surface was frozen. Under normal conditions, volcanic CO2 would be reabsorbed by weathering and rivers, but during snowball Earth, this natural thermostat was nearly paralyzed. Land was covered in ice, oceans frozen, rain turned to ice, rivers blocked, weathering halted, and CO2 had no escape. It accumulated in the atmosphere, gradually like steam in a sealed bathroom over time. Over millions of years, CO2 concentrations slowly increased. Scientists estimate that greenhouse gas levels could have been hundreds of times higher than today, strong enough to begin breaking the massive ice layer. From beneath the ice, volcanic heat quietly accumulated, gradually surpassing a critical threshold, initiating a slow thaw. Unlike flipping a switch, this was a process lasting millions of years, but the effect was irresistible. As warmer hotspots began breaking the thick ice, the albedo feedback reversed. Darker surfaces, land and water absorbed more sunlight, increasing heat and melting more ice. A process that had once driven Earth into endless cold now began to reverse, creating a massive geological greenhouse effect toward warming. The melting occurred exponentially. Icebergs broke apart, oceans gradually opened, and land once buried under ice began to reveal continental shelves and plains. Glaciers that had extended near the equator retreated, releasing nutrient-rich sediments into the oceans. Cold, oxygen-poor waters that had been sealed off were now filled with light and new energy. This was when life seized the opportunity, restoring disrupted biological cycles. Bacterial mats, once clinging under ice and in hydrothermal vents, expanded, reproduced faster, and gradually became food sources for more complex organisms, laying the groundwork for the subsequent biological explosion. Notably, thin carbonate layers, rapidly formed after the Ice Age, recorded this event precisely. They appear across tropical oceans from Namibia to Australia, from Brazil to Canada. Within these layers, Carbon and sulfur isotope ratios provide clues showing extreme disruption in the carbon and oxygen cycles. Oceans that were once stratified, iron-rich, but low in oxygen were suddenly mixed, bringing oxygen and nutrients back to shallow waters. These carbonate layers are evidence that biological revival was not gradual, but a powerful, rapid, and intense surge, as if Earth were breathing again after millions of years of holding its breath. This process also demonstrates the adaptive power of life. Cyanobacteria, archaea, and other extremophiles, once sheltered in hydrothermal vents and under thick ice, not only survived but exploited the new conditions. They adapted to surging nutrient concentrations, changing temperatures, and sunlight, developing new biological mechanisms, paving the way for later diversification. This was the moment when their survival traits, honed over millions of years in icy conditions, became a springboard for the evolution of more complex organisms. The sight of Earth emerging from Snowball Earth, viewed from an imaginary spacecraft, is spectacular. Giant ice sheets cracking, dark blue waters gradually appearing among ice shelves, glaciers retreating to reveal pristine land, and carbonate seas blooming like a reflective carpet of sunlight. This is the transformation from a silent, frozen world to a vibrant planet, where chemical flows, photosynthesis, and biological cycles are restarted. Water layers that had been sealed off were now filled with oxygen and nutrients, ready to support new complex ecosystems. The melting process was not merely ice disappearing, it was a global reconstruction. It broke the mirror-like ice layer, restarted oceanic and atmospheric cycles, reestablished nutrient systems, and created conditions necessary for evolution. Geologists, through analyzing rock layers, banded iron formations, carbon and sulfur isotopes, have reconstructed this process with remarkable detail. They show that Earth did not simply melt, it was gradually reborn, with each rock fragment, each sediment layer, telling a story of persistent life and planetary revival. As ice melted, CO2 was gradually reabsorbed by weathering and rivers, reestablishing the planet's natural thermostat. The balance between greenhouse gases and carbon absorption returned to normal, yet the planet had been completely transformed. Bacterial lineages, surviving stromatolites from the Ice Age, now became key nodes in the new biological network, contributing to unprecedented biological diversification. The world after Snowball Earth became a grand experiment in how life adapts, evolves, and explodes when opportunity arises. Over millions of years, Earth transitioned from a nearly completely frozen state to a vibrant planet where ecosystems flourished, water, light, and CO2 were balanced again. This demonstrates an important lesson. Although Earth may experience the most extreme events, life always finds a way to persist, and these extreme changes may act as catalysts for evolution and unprecedented biodiversity. This process reminds us that life not only endures, but exploits challenges to expand and thrive, from tiny bacteria beneath the ice to complex ecosystems on the surface in the future. As the glaciers finally retreated, Earth seemed to turn a new page, and the transformation occurred at an astonishing pace. Lands once buried under kilometers of ice now revealed bare rock surfaces, jagged mountain slopes, and nascent deep valleys. Meltwater from the glaciers poured down, not as quiet streams, but as roaring torrents, carrying enormous volumes of water along with mud, sand, gravel, and sediments from the newly exposed rock surfaces. Earth was no longer silent. It roared, trembled, and plunged into a state of geological chaos, where everything from landscapes to climate was violently disturbed. Floods eroded valleys, forming new river systems, reshaping coastlines, and even creating entirely new hollows and plains where life could develop in the future. At the same time, the oceans reacted violently. Waters that had once been sealed off, oxygen poor and iron rich, were now strongly mixed by the glacial flows, blending cold waters with warmer layers. Nutrients accumulated over millions of years under the ice now surged to the surface, creating a chemical soup rich in carbon, sulfur, iron, and oxygen. This was precisely the moment when the carbonate layers mentioned in the previous chapter formed rapidly. Calcium carbonate crystallizing from dissolved carbon dioxide in seawater, like a sigh of the planet etched into the rock. This is evidence of a rejuvenated Earth, from geological chaos to ocean chemistry. Life, which had endured in the darkness under the ice, now faced unprecedented opportunities. Bacteria, archaea, and simple algae suddenly found themselves swimming in nutrient-rich oxygenated waters, an experience akin to emerging from a dark basement into bright sunlight, or from a simple dinner to a vibrant buffet. Many scientists believe this stage, called the Thor phase, triggered bursts of evolutionary innovation, laying the groundwork for the Cambrian explosion tens of millions of years later. Not all organisms survived. Many simple species were eliminated, but those that remained now had a vast stage to develop, transform, and experiment with more complex forms. The climate at this time was also extremely volatile. Global average temperatures surged, with some regions reaching up to 50 degrees Celsius or 122 degrees Fahrenheit, transforming Earth from a snowball into a gigantic steam bath. Floods, torrential rains, and newly formed rivers intertwined with erupting volcanoes and lightning streaking across the sky, creating scenes both chaotic and spectacular. These extreme changes, however, carried the conditions necessary for life to flourish: rapid weathering of land, CO2 removal from the atmosphere, oxygen incorporation into oceans and the atmosphere, and the emergence of new ecological niches ready to host the next wave of biodiversity. The oceans, nearly entirely frozen during the snowball Earth, now opened like a gigantic laboratory. Nutrients from deep sediments rose to the surface, triggering blooms of bacteria and algae, accelerating photosynthesis and releasing oxygen into the environment. This was the first true global biological bloom, where oceans turned vibrant green with microbial life. Though simple, these organisms laid the foundation for more complex food webs in the future. Atmospheric oxygen levels rose slowly but steadily, marking the beginning of a new era where life could expand on a larger and more complex scale. As the world emerged from the ice, geology continued to record these events. Carbon and sulfur isotopes in sediments indicate a disruption of global chemical cycles, while increased oxidation is evident in sedimentary rock layers and cap carbonates. Every event, from the melting of ice to the biological explosion, was recorded in stone, like ancient journals recounting Earth's post-glacial story. Scientists today can read these traces, reconstructing millions of years of planetary history with astonishing detail. When sunlight first reached the equatorial regions no longer covered by ice, it shone down on shallow continental shelves, enabling the emergence of simple polychaetes, primitive sponges, and colonial planktonic organisms. They were the early ancestors of more complex life forms later, paving the way for the glorious Cambrian period. The harsh environmental pressures of snowball Earth combined with the consequences of the Thor phase, warm, nutrient-rich waters, increased oxygen, and new ecological niches, created favorable conditions for accelerated evolution. One could say that the snowball, with all its cruelty and challenges, was the catalyst for the complex development of life. Thus, post-glacial Earth became chaotic yet fertile, dangerous yet full of potential. Volcanoes still erupted, storms still raged, but these extreme changes were stepping stones for a new era. Every breath we take today, every grain of dust we step on, is the result of millions of years of geological and biological history. From tiny bacteria surviving under ice to blooming algae and the first multicellular organisms, everything was built upon a foundation of a once completely frozen Earth. Looking back at the entire event, Snowball Earth was not merely a frozen period. It was a lesson in vitality, adaptability, and planetary resurrection. It reminds us that stability is temporary, life never stops, and every extreme condition holds the potential for renewal. Earth, which once held its breath under thick ice, now took a new breath, offering opportunities for the diverse and complex life that we witness today. The Precambrian, the period leading up to the Cambrian, can be imagined as a quiet prelude before a geological and biological symphony began. After millions of years under ice, Earth had just emerged from the Thor phase, and the shallow oceans were teeming with energy, nutrients, and oxygen, turning the world into a vast natural laboratory. Simple organisms that had dominated bacteria and archaea continued to exist, but the post-glacial environment created the perfect stage for more complex cells to appear. Eukaryotic cells, with organelles and the ability to cooperate, began forming the first cellular communities. These initial cooperative efforts, though modest, laid the foundation for multicellularity. Some cells specialized in nutrition, others in structure, some experimented with movement or defense, and over millions of years, These small assemblies evolved into more complex biological structures, preparing for the next major leap. While these microorganisms experimented with diversification and cooperation, the Ediacaran organisms appeared like soft ghosts, drifting slowly in shallow waters. Named after the Edia Hills in Australia, the Ediacaran biota lived approximately 575 to 541 million years ago and were the first organisms to leave clear traces of complex life on sedimentary rocks. They had unusual shapes: flat leaves, teardrops, discs, tubes, or quilted pillows, lacking bones, claws, or jaws, yet still exhibiting specialized biological structures. Their traces, like eerie outlines in ancient sediments, suggest that evolution was experimenting with new life forms, from basic structures to early ecological relationships, all occurring in a nutrient rich, oxygenated post glacial world with abundant ecological space. For millions of years, the Ediacaran biota represented the first enhancement of complexity, but the real leap occurred when the Cambrian began, around 541 million years ago. This was the period when life exploded at an unprecedented pace, a cosmic dawn, revealing the latent colors of marine organisms. New bodies appeared: animals with hard shells, jointed limbs, developed eyes, mouths, and flexible movement. Creatures like trilobites, anomalocaridids with circular mouths, and the bizarre hallucigenia appeared in Cambrian seas. Each species a new expression of biological capability, each form an inventive evolutionary experiment. The snowball Earth did not directly cause the Cambrian explosion, but it created the conditions necessary for rapid evolution. First, glacial periods acted as evolutionary bottlenecks, eliminating weaker lineages and forcing survivors to adapt and become stronger. Second, the aftermath of the Thor phase fertilized the oceans with iron, phosphate, and oxygen-rich nutrients, providing the raw materials for organisms to experiment with new survival strategies. Third, environmental instability and chaos offered opportunities for innovative organismal combinations: movement, predation, burrowing, and the development of sensory organs, brains, and more complex biological structures. Earth, having undergone a thorough upheaval, seemed to reset the board, reshuffling the rules of biology and giving organisms an entirely new set of pieces. This playing field was no longer as it had been, and evolutionary rules were now rewritten with diverse and complex mechanisms. With an environment rich in oxygen, nutrients, and abundant light, organisms began exploring new strategies. They developed segmented body forms, locomotory organs, and the first sensory structures, from detecting prey to avoiding predators. Ecological networks began to form. Predator-prey relationships, parasitism, symbiosis, and competition were all established in these emerald, shallow seas. The seas became living laboratories, where evolution experimented with countless ideas, from simple to complex, from the first organs to diverse body forms, and from basic ecological behaviors to sophisticated survival strategies. Notably, this diversification did not occur randomly but followed patterns of adaptation. Species developed hard skeletons for protection, mouths and sensory organs for predation, eyes and limbs for mobility. Each innovation opened new ecological niches. Many groups found their evolutionary rhythm mixing biological mechanisms, body structures, and behaviors creatively, all reflecting the influences of a post-glacial world: warm, oxygen-rich, nutrient-abundant, and ecologically spacious for experimentation. This turning point demonstrates that post-snowball Earth was not merely a recovery from ice, but a comprehensive restructuring of ecological and biological frameworks. Life began to complexify layer by layer: predators and prey, nervous systems, skeletons, ecosystems, all gradually forming a dense and diverse web of life. The process from a frozen Earth to a flourishing one was not merely a geological event, but an evolutionary program orchestrated by physical, chemical, and biological conditions. And looking back, every breath, every cell, every gene in our bodies originates from organisms that survived the snowball, microbes that drifted in icy oceans, and the first cells that cooperated to form multicellularity. We are not only products of stardust, but descendants of recovery, resilience, and biological innovation. As we drift into sleep, imagine the first complex organisms floating gently in the warm waters of the Cambrian, every movement, every pulse of life reminding us that today's complex life was built upon the subtle and patient experiments of a once frozen world. As the curtain of science gradually lifts, the debate surrounding Snowball Earth becomes more vivid than ever. Earth was not merely a planet frozen billions of years ago. It was a vast laboratory for the laws of climate, ecology, and geology. On one side stands the snowball Earth hypothesis, arguing that the planet was once completely covered in ice from pole to equator, with ice sheets kilometers thick. On the other, the slushball model, where equatorial oceans retained patches of unfrozen water, providing crucial refuges for life. This debate is not only about historical accuracy, but also about the nature of science itself. Open questions, uncertainty, and the ability to think creatively to explain fragmented evidence. Each rock sample, each sediment core, each isotope shift is a piece of the puzzle, and scientists constantly ask, yes, but what if? Questions about ice thickness, the existence of liquid water beneath the ice, and the ability of photosynthetic microorganisms to survive are entirely reasonable. If the entire ocean were frozen, could light penetrate enough to sustain basic life cycles? Could an ice sheet a kilometer thick form while still allowing precipitation, evaporation, and hydrological cycles to operate? Could volcanic CO2 accumulate enough to break the frozen state, and would the ice slow gas escape or dampen the greenhouse effect? These questions keep researchers awake at night, yet it is precisely these questions that open doors to important discoveries about our planet. Some clues in the geological record seem to contradict a fully frozen snowball Earth. Normally, weathered sedimentary rocks indicate flowing water, and other sediments suggest glacial cycles rather than a continuous freeze. But snowball Earth proponents respond that small refuges near geothermal hotspots or under thin ice could still sustain life, and that different sediments may reflect regional variations, local tectonics, or post-glacial rock reworking. Even modern computer models show that continuous volcanic CO2 emissions, combined with greenhouse feedbacks, could rapidly melt ice sheets, releasing water and energy, creating a post-glacial scenario of intense upheaval while still following the laws of physics. It is precisely this opposition between geological evidence and theoretical models that gives snowball Earth its special allure. It is not merely a historical issue. It is an experiment in Earth's flexibility and response to extreme conditions. When oceans are covered, water is frozen and the climate stagnates. Small system feedbacks, rising CO2, shifts in heat flow, terrain changes can trigger a domino effect, leading to a global reversal with astonishing speed and intensity. It is a lesson in how climate systems respond to extreme stress, a concept with real-world significance today as humanity faces climate change. But Snowball Earth matters far beyond understanding Earth's past. It is a biological and cosmological guidebook. When astrobiologists simulate how life might exist on icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, they often draw inspiration from microbial refuges on frozen Earth. Sheltered areas around hydrothermal vents under thin ice or in partially unfrozen oceans show that life can persist in seemingly absolute extremes. Snowball Earth becomes a manual on resilience and adaptation for organisms, from bacteria to more complex forms, from extreme environments on Earth to the potential for life on distant planets. The significance of Snowball Earth extends to modern philosophical and ethical questions. It reminds us of the fragility of our planet, how a small change in the atmosphere or ocean can trigger global reactions, and the responsibility of humanity to maintain this delicate balance. Looking at ancient geologic data and computer simulations, we realize that this planet always oscillates between extreme and temporarily stable states, and life persists thanks to its capacity to adapt, store resources, and exploit natural refuges. Snowball Earth is not merely a part of Earth's history. It is a mirror reflecting how our systems might respond to pressures today and in the future. Moreover, this debate underscores the true nature of science. It is not the search for eternal truth, but a process of questioning, testing, and reasoning based on evidence. Those studying ancient rocks, trekking through remote hills, drilling sediment cores, and analyzing isotope ratios are not merely recording historical events. They are participating in an ongoing dialogue, sharpening intellectual tools, and expanding perspectives on the possibilities of life and climate. Their patience, meticulousness, and imagination turn silent rock samples into a vivid story of Earth, where every ice sheet, every CO2 flow, every microbial trace tells of a planet constantly changing and full of surprises. And when we imagine Snowball Earth, what is astonishing is not just the ice and extreme temperatures, but the way life found a path, forming communities that survived adversity and paving the way for the Cambrian explosion that followed. It reminds us that life, though fragile, always finds a way to evolve and adapt, and that extreme limits are not an endpoint, but an opportunity for biological creativity and evolution. Snowball Earth, therefore, is a vivid lesson about resilience, about science as an unending conversation, about the importance of understanding extreme climate feedbacks, and about the potential for life not only on Earth, but in the universe. When we look at hidden waters beneath ice, ancient hydrothermal vents, or simulations of distant planets, we see a reflection of Earth itself, where every scientific question, every debate about rocks, every microbial discovery leads to deeper understanding of how organisms and planets can coexist in a challenging universe. Life on Earth, when viewed through the lens of Snowball Earth, is a story of persistence rather than invincibility. This planet has endured bone-chilling cold, catastrophic fires, and chemical floods that could have wiped out any organism completely. Yet, from cracks beneath the ice, from hidden hydrothermal vents under equatorial oceans, life found a way. This reminds us that complexity, from vibrant coral ecosystems to ancient forests, from subterranean bacteria to higher animals, is not a permanent trait. It is a fragile achievement forged through challenge, adaptation, and chance. Every ice sheet, every volcanic eruption, every past climate fluctuation is a lesson in instability. Conditions we take for granted, clean air, moderate temperatures, flowing water, are in fact temporary gifts easily lost. Earth has teetered on the brink of both fire and ice many times. Mass extinctions, acidified oceans, lands transformed into frozen deserts. All occur in cycles, not by chance, but as a consequence of the planet's physical and chemical laws. Reflecting on these moments helps put the present into context. Today's climate change is not unprecedented, but a variation of processes Earth has experienced before, differing only in speed and cause. Snowball Earth also reminds us of the fragility and interconnectedness of ecosystems. When ice covered the oceans, photosynthetic microbes were limited, nutrient cycles stalled, and dissolved oxygen became scarce. Surviving communities had to employ sophisticated strategies. Some moved toward warm waters near volcanic sites, some formed cooperative relationships to share resources, and some sought refuge in sediment layers on the seafloor. These were the earliest forms of adaptation, and from these simple experiments arose lineages that would lead to later complex diversity. Single-celled organisms cooperating, forming communities, gradually giving rise to animals, plants, fungi, and eventually us. The wonder is that from seemingly destructive circumstances, life not only survived but learned to innovate. Studies of Snowball Earth show that extreme pressures drive biological innovation. Subtle survival methods, new cooperative strategies, and the ability to exploit energy or nutrients in unexpected places. In a way, Frozen Earth was a strict author, forcing organisms to experiment, select, and adapt. This is a profound philosophical lesson. Challenges are not enemies, but prerequisites for developing complexity and long-term adaptability. From a modern perspective, lessons from Snowball Earth become more urgent than ever. Our planet today is warming, ice is melting, sea levels rising, and greenhouse gases increasing. Climate models based on ancient data show that Earth can respond strongly to rapid change, and understanding how ecosystems survived past extremes can help us anticipate potential impacts, from species loss to global climate shifts. It raises the question, how truly sustainable are the systems we consider stable? We can learn from the biological refuges, life used in the past, to develop strategies for protecting endangered species today. Additionally, Snowball Earth invites reflection on our place in the flow of history. Every tree, every bird, every human is a descendant of survivors of the icy layers. We are the warmth following the ice, the product of persistence and adaptability tested over millions of years. Recognizing this deepens our awareness of existence. Life is not a given. It is a fragile gift, passed down through generations and through the challenges Earth imposes. Another perspective of Snowball Earth relates to cosmology and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. When scientists search for life on distant planets and moons, they often look to the extremes Earth has endured. Europa, Enceladus, or other icy worlds may host subsurface oceans where life thrives around hydrothermal vents, much like microbial refuges during ancient glaciations. Snowball Earth becomes a manual for survival in extreme conditions, reminding us that where there is energy and even a small, stable environment, life can persist. Finally, Snowball Earth is a reminder of the fragility of complexity. It teaches that biological achievements, from magnificent coral reefs to lush forests, from ecosystems to human societies, are realized through time, challenge, and resilience. Nothing is permanent, and every natural event, every human action can profoundly impact this delicate balance. Learning from the frozen past, we not only understand ancient Earth, but also learn to cherish the present, protect life, and anticipate future challenges. So, tonight, as your eyes close, imagine Earth once as a frozen planet, slowly rotating in darkness, carrying memories of ice, but also full of promise for life. From tiny cracks beneath the ice, life rose, flourished, and today we are living proof of that persistence. Snowball Earth reminds us that no matter how difficult, life can find a way, and each of us is part of that enduring legacy. When the last light filtered through the icy layers, when the frozen oceans began to pulse with tiny microbial currents, we can begin to see Snowball Earth not just as a chapter of geological history, but as a profound lesson in the power, resilience, and creativity of life. From the moments that seemed most desperate, this planet taught us that life does not only arise under ideal conditions, but can thrive when challenged. When ice covered the oceans, when light was blocked, when temperatures approached near uninhabitable levels, the earliest organisms found subtle paths to survival. They clustered around geothermal cracks, clung to nutrient-rich sediment layers, and formed cooperative communities to share energy and resources. These behaviors, small and almost invisible, laid the groundwork for the complex interactions we see in later biospheres, from vibrant coral reefs to ancient verdant forests, from symbiotic microbes to humans, all continuing the legacy of those initial survival strategies. Looking at this process, we recognize an important truth. Life is not merely about presence, but the capacity to transform, adapt, and overcome challenges. Snowball Earth was a biological crucible where organisms were forced to experiment with new survival strategies, from cooperation and functional specialization within cell clusters to exploiting unexpected energy sources like volcanic heat. These experiments, though small and humble, produced significant evolutionary leaps. The first communities of organisms formed complex structures, leading to the emergence of new capabilities such as movement, sensation, and eventually primitive nervous systems. This is clear evidence that pressure, rather than being solely destructive, can also act as a catalyst for creativity, shaping life into more resilient, diverse, and rich forms that we see today. Moreover, Snowball Earth teaches us about the fragility yet inseparability of complexity. Every ecosystem, every nutrient cycle, every flow of energy was at risk of disruption under extreme conditions. When thick ice blanketed the oceans, oxygen and carbon cycles stalled, photosynthetic organisms struggled to capture energy, and life had to seek out intricate refuges. Yet those cracks, those hidden ice oases, became sites of survival and creativity. From them, organisms not only endured but also developed new adaptive mechanisms, a reminder that biological complexity is not given but is the result of challenges, choices, and the ability to learn over time. Interestingly, the lessons from Snowball Earth are not confined to the past. Looking at the modern world as climates change, ice melts, and ecosystems face stress, we see a striking parallel. Just as prehistoric organisms had to find ways to survive under thick ice, contemporary communities of life must adjust, migrate, or adapt to persist. These fluctuations, even on a small scale, can trigger profound shifts in ecological structure, from the loss of some species to the rise of others, from changes in nutrient cycles to transformations of biological relationships. Snowball Earth reminds us that life is always flexible, but it also warns that resilience has limits. We cannot underestimate the power of environmental stress. Additionally, Snowball Earth opens broader perspectives on life in the universe. When astrobiologists imagine life on Europa, Enceladus, or other distant worlds, they draw on the extremes Earth has endured. Hydrothermal vents, subsurface oceans beneath ice, and biological oases analogous to Snowball Earth may be the only places where life can persist. This makes Snowball Earth an essential manual for biological adaptability, demonstrating that conditions seemingly uninhabitable can still nurture life if organisms find subtle ways to adapt. Finally, Snowball Earth conveys a profound philosophical message. It reminds us that life, though resilient and creative, is never guaranteed. It is the result of millions of years of challenge, adaptation, failure, and success. We are direct descendants of those who survived the icy layers. We carry within us the imprint of extreme pressures, of experimentation, and extraordinary adaptive capacity. Understanding this, we not only appreciate the past, but also bear responsibility for the present and future, to protect this planet, preserve life, and learn to adjust to the changes we are causing. So when night falls, when your eyes close and your mind drifts toward those distant glacial ages, imagine a planet once frozen yet still rising, still creative, and still vibrant. Snowball Earth is not just an ancient story, but proof of the resilience, subtlety, and recoverability of life. It teaches us that despite the harshest challenges, life always finds a way, and we, as descendants of those organisms, can also find light and hope in circumstances that may seem impossible. When you close your eyes, imagine yourself not merely as an individual, but as part of a long chain of life, an unbroken flow in which every cell in your body carries the memory of those who survived millions of years of ice and change. We are direct descendants of organisms that learned patience, learned to adapt, and found small cracks in thick ice to survive. Every breath you take, every heartbeat is formed from that history, reminding us that our existence is not a given, but a delicate and intricate achievement. As the Earth passed through the snowball periods, biological space was compressed, light was limited, and then temperatures approached near extinction levels. Life had to invent new survival strategies. Small cooperative communities, warm crevices at the ocean floor, nutrient-rich areas around hydrothermal vents, all evidence of biology's astonishing resilience. As we think about those tiny organisms, ask yourself, what can we learn from their adaptability? Snowball Earth teaches us that resilience is not infinite, but the result of subtle actions, small decisions made over millions of years. When pressure reaches extremes, survival does not arise from brute strength, but from flexibility and creativity, from exploiting every opportunity, however small, to sustain life. This also directly reflects on our current lives. The world is changing, the climate is warming, and the life around us must learn to adapt or face transformation. Learning from Snowball Earth's history helps us realize that maintaining the delicate balance of the biosphere is a continual task, and change never truly ends. It continues through generations, through communities, through each surviving cell. Imagine, in a quiet moment, ancient oceans teeming with microbes swimming around icy crevices, light filtering through thin layers of ice like tiny rays, and heat from volcanoes or hydrothermal vents permeating everywhere. Those first organisms, though small and seemingly forgettable, were the precursors to all the complex forms we see today, from vibrant coral reefs to lush, dense forests, from ancient fish to our own bodies. Snowball Earth, though once a near-extinction challenge, became nature's great school, where survival mechanisms were tested, cooperative and adaptive strategies were formed, and life learned not just to exist, but to evolve, create, and flourish. We also cannot overlook the philosophical and spiritual dimension Snowball Earth conveys. It reminds us that, regardless of storms or thick ice, life is never absolutely invulnerable and always requires care, respect, and understanding of its environment. As you drift into sleep, let your mind wander to images of ancient microbes striving to retain warmth, snowflakes falling onto frozen oceans, gentle flows of lava dissolving into cold waters, all expressions of fragile yet enduring life. Every moment they survived, every tiny adaptation, is a lesson for us today. Life is not a given. It is a precious temporary gift that always requires nurturing. Furthermore, Snowball Earth opens perspectives beyond Earth itself. When astrobiologists imagine other planets or icy moons like Europa or Enceladus, they return to ancient scenarios. Life may flourish in cracks, in subsurface oceans, in places we once thought impossible. This is not merely scientific imagination. It is proof of life's adaptability and persistence under all conditions. Snowball Earth becomes a living manual for surviving in harsh environments, and through it, we better understand our fragile yet extraordinary place in the universe. And as you fall asleep or let your thoughts drift across ancient lands, oceans, and atmospheres, ask yourself, where are you in the world tonight? How are you experiencing this story? Relaxed, enthralled, or filled with curiosity? The journey through ice, fire, silence, and the pulses of life is not only a lesson about ancient Earth, but also a reflective journey about ourselves, about fragility, resilience, and deep connection to all forms of life that existed before us. Every cell in your body, every breath, every heartbeat is evidence of billions of years of evolutionary endurance, traces of organisms that survived ice layers, harsh climate changes, complex and sometimes unpredictable biological cycles. Snowball Earth reminds us that life, though fragile, always finds a way where we least expect it. It teaches us patience, how to seek light and warmth in seemingly impenetrable places, and the importance of protecting and valuing the planet we inhabit. So as you sink into sleep, let your mind travel through ancient oceans, bubbling hydrothermal vents, ice, and faint light, and realize that the story of Snowball Earth is not just the past. It is a reminder of resilience, creativity, and the interconnectedness of all living things on this planet, including yourself. As you begin to sink deeper into thoughts of Snowball Earth, imagine this planet not merely as a cold sphere, but as a vast stage for biological experimentation, where anything could happen, where the limits of survival were pushed to the extreme. The Earth was once wrapped in kilometers thick ice, yet even in that harsh cold, life found its way. Microbes, primitive cell clusters, and even early multicellular organisms learned to adapt in ways we are only beginning to understand. They had no choice. They were forced to innovate, to experiment, and to find safe refuges. Small cracks in the ice, warm waters around hydrothermal vents, sheltered rock surfaces where light and heat still penetrated. These were the first lessons in resilience. Life does not exist passively. It responds, adjusts, and evolves. Picture these moments not only as biological events, but as the breathing of the planet. Earth froze, inhaled deeply, held its breath in solid ice, and then exhaled in melting phases, releasing accumulated volcanic CO2, opening a vibrant new era of life. Each cycle of freezing and thawing was not just a geological event, but a subtle rhythm shaping ecosystems, teaching biology to cooperate, share resources, and experiment with new forms of life. Early cellular communities laid the groundwork for more complex cooperation, for multicellularity for animals, plants, and eventually for us. Snowball Earth is living proof that extreme crises can spark biological creativity on levels we could never imagine. But the story does not stop at survival. It is also a lesson about fragility and the preciousness of living conditions. As the Earth experienced ice ages, every aspect of ecological balance was tested. Climate, nutrient cycles, light, oxygen, all became harsh, sometimes seemingly impossible to sustain. What survived during these periods was not taken for granted. It was evidence of nature's subtlety and ingenuity. Every surviving organism, every living cell was a rare event, a fragile yet meaningful achievement. And this brings us back to ourselves. We, as part of the biosphere, also live in a delicate system where every change can ripple, where every action has impact. Snowball Earth reminds us that life is not eternal, and what we consider normal, warmth, oxygen, water, light, are truly temporary gifts that we must cherish. The next miracle is the capacity for evolution. Snowball Earth teaches us not only about survival, but also about creative evolution. When pressures became extreme, organisms began experimenting with new possibilities. Diverse body forms, movement mechanisms, different reproductive strategies, even primitive social interactions among cells. This laid the foundation for the later Cambrian explosion, when all forms of life suddenly appeared with unprecedented richness. Snowball Earth was a crucial stepping stone, a biological alchemy. Weak lineages were eliminated, survivors diversified rapidly, and new biological capacities were tested in the expanded, nutrient-rich post-glacial environment. Every change, every biological breakthrough during this period became part of the evolutionary network we see today, from bacteria to complex organisms and ultimately to us. Not only biological, Snowball Earth is a lesson in science, in how humans understand and explore the world. The debate over the extent of glaciation, the snowball versus slushball Earth models, the clues in sedimentary rocks, all demonstrate the true nature of science. It is not about absolute statements, but a continuous journey of questioning, observing, debating, and testing. When scientists venture to remote outcrops studying billion-year-old rock layers, they are not merely gathering data. They are learning to think about life, climate, and the systems to which we belong. The snowball Earth debate is a philosophical moment. It forces us to recognize complexity, uncertainty, and the need to listen to evidence from nature rather than rely solely on hypothesis. From all of this, we realize a profound truth. We, like all organisms on Earth, are products of harsh history and subtle opportunities. Snowball Earth reminds us that resilience is a core part of life, that every organism, every ecological community, and every planet must learn to balance pressure and opportunity. It also reminds us that we cannot separate ourselves from our planet. What happens on Earth affects all forms of life, from tiny single-celled organisms to humans themselves. We are heirs to survival, creativity, and adaptability shaped and tested by Snowball Earth. So, when you close your eyes, let your mind drift through frozen oceans, bubbling hydrothermal vents, and primitive organisms swimming in dim light. Think of yourself not merely as an individual, but as part of a billions of years long evolutionary flow, carrying the warmth and memory of the survivors. Let gentle questions enter your mind. What can we learn from Earth's history? How can we protect life in a changing world? How can we create and adapt as the organisms once did after the harsh ice? Snowball Earth is not just an ancient ice age. It is a reminder of resilience, of fragile complexity, of the value of temporary gifts the planet gives us, and of life's capacity for adaptation and creativity. It is a journey from stillness to the complex symphony of life, from challenge to resilience, from distant past to lessons we can carry into the present. As you sink into sleep, let this story seep into you, letting the memories of ice, fire, light, and life become part of yourself, a reminder that we are products of deep history, and that life, though fragile, always finds a way to survive, evolve, and flourish. When we look back at Snowball Earth, it is not just a chapter in geological history, but a metaphor for the resilience and adaptability of life. Imagine the Earth during that period: oceans covered by ice, sunlight only filtering through tiny gaps, and most of the planet seemingly in hibernation. Yet even in that seemingly absolute silence, a subtle biological process was occurring, almost imperceptibly, but with great intensity. Microbes, primitive cells, and the first multicellular communities were not only surviving, but thriving in ways we are only beginning to understand. Every surviving organism was a triumph of patience and adaptability. And when we reflect on this, we realize an important lesson. Life is not just existence, but learning how to operate, learning to make use of limited conditions, and turning adversity into opportunity. This is when we see the value of harsh environments. Snowball Earth, with its thick ice and extreme climate, was like a massive natural laboratory. It tested every possibility for survival, forcing organisms to innovate, cooperate, and explore strategies never before tried. Tiny refuges, cracks under the ice, or warm hydrothermal vents became crucial centers of survival, where new lineages formed and evolved. Under conditions that seemed impossible, organisms developed complex mechanisms to sustain life, experimented with body forms, reproductive methods, and movement strategies. These were the foundations of the biodiversity we see today, and they remind us that extreme pressure can be a catalyst for creativity and evolution. Imagine that every small moment of life during this icy period was a testament to resilience. Snowball Earth not only demonstrated nature's patience, but also emphasized the fragility of ecosystems. As the ice spread, every balancing factor, from water cycles, climate, to oxygen and nutrients, was challenged. Even a small change in temperature or light could lead to the extinction of lineages not flexible enough. But those that persisted learned to adapt, to cooperate, to exploit limited resources, to turn pressure into evolution. This serves as a reminder that life does not exist randomly. It persists through the ability to respond, adjust, and adapt to the surrounding environment. Snowball Earth is also a lesson in science and knowledge. The debates among geologists, the snowball and slushball models, sediment core analyses, and isotope ratios all reflect the nature of science. It is not about immutable truths, but a continuous journey of questioning, testing, and interpretation. When researchers travel to remote outcrops observing billion-year-old rock layers, they are not merely collecting data, they are learning to think about systems, life, and how planets operate. They realize that complexity and uncertainty are inherent in nature, and that every discovery opens new questions. Snowball Earth is a vast classroom where the lessons are not only about ice and climate, but about humility, learning to ask the right questions, and the importance of patience in scientific inquiry. Another equally important aspect is the connection between past and present. Snowball Earth reminds us that our planet has undergone extreme fluctuations, from ice ages to tropical temperatures, from near total devastation to biological explosions. These experiences teach us that the stability we enjoy today is not permanent. The life we see, from forests and coral reefs to humans, is the result of lineages that survived harsh trials. We are the legacy of perseverance and adaptation. Recognizing this helps us place the present in a broader context, reminding us that our planet and the life it holds always needs protection, appreciation, and deeper understanding. Moreover, Snowball Earth opens philosophical reflections on humanity's relationship with nature. It reminds us that we are not separate from this planet. We are part of a larger network where every change has impact. The resilience of ancient ecosystems is a testament to nature's latent power, but it also warns that human intervention today can alter this delicate balance. Every action, every decision can affect our ecological future, and understanding the past, about the challenges the planet has endured, helps us learn to act responsibly, wisely, and sustainably. Finally, when you close your eyes and allow your mind to drift through the ice ages, let this story seep into your thoughts. Imagine primitive organisms swimming in the warm waters around hydrothermal vents, microbes striving to survive in narrow ice cracks, cell communities experimenting with new forms of life. Let the reflection on Snowball Earth remind you that even under the harshest conditions, life finds a way. And remember that we, as part of the biosphere, also carry the warmth and memory of the survivors, lessons about resilience, creativity, adaptation, and the meaning of existence. Snowball Earth is not just a geological period. It is a reminder, a vivid lesson, a testament to the latent power of nature and the persistence of life. It teaches us about the past, the present, and how we can envision the future. It connects science, philosophy, and education, opening a door for us to understand that life, though fragile, always has the capacity to overcome, adapt, and flourish. And in the darkness, as you rest, let this image follow you. A planet once frozen, yet always knowing how to live, grow, and shine, reminding us of the value of patience, creativity, and gratitude for the wonderful gift we call Earth.